Oh my, is that a new truck in the driveway? Is that a 2023 F150 with the 5-liter Coyote engine in it? Yes, it is, and I can't wait to get into it. But first, let's get this thing down to the shop. What is going on today, guys? My name's Alex. Welcome back to the channel. Like you guys probably know, we have this 2023 F150 with us with the 5-liter Coyote engine. And we're gonna dig in there and see what's going on. So first, we'll talk about some specs, just some general information about the engine. Then we'll dive into some things that I really like about it. And then obviously we'll talk about things that I don't like. And finally, just some common issues that you guys should probably be aware about if you're thinking of buying one. So that's what we're doing today. Should be fun. I think the front end looks pretty good. It kind of looks more car-ish than truckish, if that makes any sense. It still looks pretty good. I like the darked out headlights. GM's kind of the same thing. In fact, the GM headlights look very similar for whatever reason. Decent looking front end. The paint color here, not really a fan, but you know, it's just paint. You can get whatever color you want. This is the XLT, so not a complete base, but it's pretty low on the totem pole in terms of trim levels. Obviously we got the crew cab, and then we have the shorter box, which for some reason feels actually still pretty lengthy in here. It's not the biggest thing. If you do put a sheet of plywood in here, it's gonna stick out a fair amount, but it is what it is. Got your F-150 stamped in the back. She's a Nova Scotia truck, as you guys can see. 4x4, gotta have it. I don't think they make very many two-wheel drive pickup trucks anymore. I don't think dealers would actually even have a two-wheel drive truck on the lot. The mirrors are actually an interesting cutout. They work fine, they work good, but I've never seen a mirror just so sliced off like that, which is interesting. Don't know why Ford did that, maybe for some aerodynamics. Not really sure, maybe someone could tell me why. But let's pop the hood and see what's going on with this 5-liter Coyote engine. I want to thank the official apparel sponsor of the channel, Old North Co. They are a local London, Ontario company founded by two sisters. They have a great selection of outdoor Canadian designs in t-shirts, sweaters, hats. They even have cool stuff for your dogs. If you guys are interested, put a 10% discount code down below, so check them out. Ooh. Oh, she looks nice and clean in here. This 5-liter Coyote engine made its debut in 2011 in the Mustang platform, and then obviously in the F-150 platform, replacing the 4.6-liter V8, which in my opinion was actually a really good engine. This 5-liter comes with a full aluminum block with cast iron liners in it. It also comes with aluminum heads, or high flow aluminum heads, as well as a forged crankshaft, forged connecting rods, and 4-bolt mains. But the big thing about this Coyote engine is the dual overhead cams, which kind of separates it from its competitors, which are just simple pushrod V8s. Over the years since 2011, there have been 4 generations of this 5-liter Coyote engine. Obviously, we have the 4th gen in this truck here right behind me, but there are a couple notable changes throughout those generations that I kind of want to touch on. Now, the 2nd generation of Coyote engine came out in 2015 with some minor tweaks on the air intake system, as well as giving this engine some larger intake and exhaust valves to really help boost that power. But it wasn't until 2018 with the 3rd generation that we really saw some major changes to this engine. The first major difference in 2018 with the 3rd gen Coyote engine is the fact that the engine displacement actually changed. So originally the 5-liter came with 302 cubic inches of displacement, but starting in 2018, this engine now puts out 307 cubic inches of displacement, and it's all due to the new cylinder liner technology. Now, originally this engine came with cast iron liners, but Ford threw those in the garbage, and instead they used what's called plasma wire arc transfer technology. Now, basically what that is, it's a spray-on liner. So you still have an aluminum block, but you can't really have aluminum cylinder liners. It's just not strong enough. So what they do is they spray on metal liners onto the aluminum block, if that makes sense. Now, with that, you actually get a larger bore, and that is what results in this engine having more displacement. It's all because of that new liner technology, which is kind of interesting. Secondly, in 2018, with the 3rd generation Coyote engine, Ford introduced direct injection. Now, I'm going to talk about this in a second because I think how they implemented this direct injection was actually very smart, and you get all the advantages of direct injection with very minimal downsides traditionally with direct injections. Finally, in 2021, Ford dropped the 4th gen Coyote engine in their F-150 lineup. And the biggest change to the engine, in my opinion, is the addition of cylinder deactivation on these Coyote engines. And apparently the only reason why Ford did this was to meet government emission regulations, which kind of sucks because I'm not really a fan of cylinder deactivation. The other thing I just want to quickly mention is the main difference between the 5-liter pickup truck engine and the 5-liter Mustang engine. Now, most people probably assume they're slightly different just based upon the different power numbers. But the main difference is the cam lobe profile. So these are two beautifully drawn cam lobes, and on the left we have a longer duration cam lobe, and on the right we have the shorter duration cam lobe for the F-150, which is nicely labeled there. Basically, the Mustang is going to have a longer duration cam lobe, and this is great for high-end power, but at the sacrifice of some lower-end torque. Now, the F-150, obviously it's a pickup truck, so you kind of want that low-end torque. So what Ford did is they actually made a shorter duration lift to really help with that low-end power at some sacrifice of that top-end performance. But again, it's a pickup truck, it's not a race car. So that is basically the main difference between the 5-liter on the Mustang and the F-150. So the first thing I really like about the 5-liter Coyote is how much power you get out of such a small package. Now, when this engine was under development, Ford was trying to compete with the likes of the 6.2-liter LS3 engine from GM, as well as the newly developed at the time 6.4-liter from Chrysler. And Ford wanted to compete with those engines, but also keep a relatively same engine package size as the original 4.6-liter V8s they had in their vehicles already. So in order to keep this engine relatively small, Ford had to come up with upgrades like dual overhead cams that would allow this engine to rev much higher than the competitors' pushrod V8s. And that's exactly what they did in order to make the same power as those bigger displacement V8s. Now, the critics at the time were saying this engine was too complicated, it was a performance-based engine, and it wouldn't be able to take the loads that a pickup truck has to handle. But as the years have gone by, we've seen that this 5-liter V8 has been actually very reliable, very strong, and it has been a really nice staple in the F-150 lineup, and I think that's why Ford continues to offer this V8. I think Ford is really pushing to go with smaller displacement engines, and I think the reason why that Ford continues to sell this engine is because it is just such a good power plant of an engine. The second thing I really like about this Coyote engine is the way Ford implemented their direct injection fueling in 2018. So direct injection, I've talked about it a little bit in the past here, specifically with the Chevy engines. But basically, direct injection means that your fuel injector is directly in the combustion chamber, and there is a number of benefits from that, including increased power, increased throttle response, better fuel economy. So the benefits are there for direct injection. The issue with direct injection is that you end up getting some carbon deposits building up on your intake as well as your intake valve, because normally on a port injection system, which is a standard traditional fuel injection system, fuel is constantly spraying that intake valve and that intake manifold down with fuel, and that cleans off all the carbon. Now, what Ford did, they have a direct injection system, but they also have a port injector as well. So it's a dual injection system. So you get the benefits of direct injection, but you don't necessarily have to deal with the carboned up issues that you would with just one injector directly in the combustion chamber. So I really like Ford doing that, and I have a hunch that GM may be doing that in the future because of their carboned up issues. Another thing I quite like about this 5-liter Coyote engine is the fuel economy. Now, this is obviously a V8 engine in a pickup truck, so we're not going to be expecting to get 40 miles to the gallon. It's not going to be a fuel efficient vehicle, but for a 400 horsepower V8 engine in a 5,000 pound pickup truck, it is surprisingly really efficient, and on paper, this thing will get 20 miles per gallon combined city and highway, which again is pretty impressive. And to further prove my point, here's actually a real world fuel economy number. So I've driven 100 kilometers and I have 12.6 liters per 100K. And that is a very true city and highway because I live out of town. And that fuel economy number is better than what I got, basically running the same route with the 2.7 liter 4-cylinder turbocharged engine from GM. So we should expect premium fuel economy numbers. We're starting off with 14.2 liters per 100 kilometers. So this engine is quite efficient, if that is something that is concerning you guys. Another thing that I really like about this 5-liter Coyote engine is the fact that this engine is made in Windsor, Ontario. Now, 2 weeks ago when I was talking about the 7.3 liter Godzilla engine, I mentioned it was also made in Windsor, and it's just really nice to see that Ford is keeping their production up here in North America and specifically in Canada, whereas we're seeing a lot of engines from Ram specifically and GM going down to Mexico. Now, if you don't know where Windsor is, it's directly across the river from Detroit, and it's home to some good hardworking people, and they do take a great pride in their automotive industry, just like Detroit. So it's really good to see, and I grew up 2 hours up the road from there, so it gives me a little bit of pride knowing that this engine was built, you know, just down the road from where I grew up. So I really like that. Now, speaking of engine manufacturing, this 5-liter engine is part of the Modular engine family from Ford. Basically, any engine from 1991 and above with an overhead cam is considered a modular engine. And the first one started with the 4.6 liter V8, which I mentioned earlier. I think is actually a really good engine. I think any mid-2000s Mustang guys would agree with me. They do make some really good power out of them. And again, all those engines were made in Windsor, Ontario, but they're called modular engines because of the manufacturing process, which Ford describes as a process which allows for significant faster changeover when switching from one engine platform to the other. This also allows for the existing engine plant and their supporting offsite production facilities to handle shorter production runs, implementing shorter production runs without incurring large shutdowns and retooling expenses, which helps make the manufacturing process less expensive for the end consumer. Now, that was quite the mouthful, but basically what that's going to do, it's going to allow Ford to make these engines in a very efficient manner, which is going to translate into some reliability right away just from the manufacturing process, which I really like. Now, the last thing that I like about this engine is how high this thing can rev with those dual overhead cams in there. And I read online this truck will rev to 7,500 RPM, which I don't think is correct. I could only get it to rev to 7,000 RPM, which is still pretty high on the RPM band. The red line for the 6.2, the current 6.2 as well, is only 6,000 RPM. The current red line for the 5.3 from GM is only 5,800 RPM. So this thing has quite a bit more revs than the competitors. And what I was finding is when you put your foot down, you drop to like 4,500 RPM, and normally in those pushrod V8s, you won't be able to drop another gear because you'll be well over red line. But with this engine, you can drop another gear and come to like 6,300, 6,400 RPM and keep driving that needle right down into the red line, which is first of all very fun to drive. But if you need that extra high-end power out of a gas engine, it's there with this Coyote, which I think is kind of cool. Now, I know I said I would talk about things that I don't like about this engine as well as the common issues, but I find that these videos are running a little bit long and I'm actually having to edit some stuff out. So I think what I'm gonna do is make this a two-parter. We'll end off here right now, and then I'll drop the cons and the stuff I don't like maybe later in the week or next weekend. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, let me know what you think about this 5-liter Ford. Do you guys like it? Always interested in your thoughts. But as always, if you did like this video, don't forget to leave that thumbs up. And if you like cool stuff like this, don't forget to subscribe. I may or may not be picking up a massive trailer next weekend. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We will be towing soon enough. So I'm excited about that. But anyways, enough of me. We'll see you in the next freaking video.